I proposed, and she said yes to someone else. Reddit story. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today's story is not just about heartbreak. It is about timing, about loyalty, and about the devastating moment when you realize you have been holding on to a dream alone. We grow up believing that if we love hard enough, stay loyal long enough, fight through the tough times, bravely enough, it will all work out in the end. Love forever, happily ever after. But what happens when you realize that, while you were fighting for a future together, the person you love was quietly building a different future with someone else? Today's story is about a man who believed in forever, who spent years loving, believing, planning, only to find out, in the most devastating way possible, that forever was already promised, but not to him. It is a story about trust, misplaced, about heartbreak that hits you when you least expect it, and about the crushing realization that sometimes love is not a matter of effort or loyalty or time. Sometimes it is simply about two people growing apart, without ever meaning to. Today's story will pull you deep into that moment. That cruel moment when your heart realizes it has been carrying a weight that was never shared. It will remind you that no matter how much love you give, you cannot make someone stay. You cannot make someone choose you. If their heart has already moved on, but it will also remind you that survival is possible, that healing is not just about forgetting. It is about choosing yourself again, choosing to believe that the right love, the real love, will never leave you on one knee with a ring in your hand, and no one left to say yes. So get comfortable, because this story will take you through hope, through heartbreak, and finally, through the quiet strength it takes to stand back up after being shattered. Let's dive in. There is a kind of heartbreak that hits you so suddenly, so violently that it feels like the ground disappears beneath you. That is exactly what happened to me the night I asked the woman I loved to marry me. Aiden and I had spent 6 years building a life together. It was not perfect. No relationship ever is, but it was ours. We fought, we made up, we dreamed, we planned, or at least I thought we did when I decided to propose. It was not a question of if, it was just a question of how I spent months saving for the ring, not the biggest ring, not the most expensive, but one I knew she would love, simple, elegant hours. I planned everything down to the smallest detail. The beach where we had our first date, the sunset at just the right moment, our song playing quietly in the background from a hidden speaker. I rehearsed what I would say 100 times, 1,000 times. When the day finally came, my heart could barely stay inside my chest. She looked beautiful, like she always did, wind in her hair. That smile that could undo me in a second. I walked her down to the water. Pretended. We were just taking a stroll until I found the spot. The spot where I had first fallen in love with her. I dropped to one knee, pulled out the ring, and began to speak. I told her she was my home, my best friend, my dream, wrapped in laughter and patience and late-night talks. I told her I wanted to build a life with her, to choose her every day, for the rest of our lives. And then I asked, "Will you marry me?" There was a pause, a heartbeat too long, a crack in the universe. And then the tears started, not happy, tears, broken tears. She shook her head, mouth trembling, eyes full of pain. And then she said it. "I can't. I said yes to someone else." I could not process the words, could not breathe around them. Someone else. Someone who had slipped into the spaces between us, while I was busy building dreams for both of us. A coworker, someone who was there during the long nights, the stressful projects, the moments when life made her question everything. She had fallen out of love with me, fallen into love with him, and somewhere along the way, without ever meaning to, she had said yes to a future that no longer included me. I knelt there, ring still in my hand, memories crashing over me like waves. The birthdays, the anniversaries, the whispered promises, gone. She apologized, over and over. Words that meant nothing, because you cannot apologize for leaving someone while they are still holding on. I stood up, not because I was ready, but because I knew I had no choice. I put the ring back in my pocket. Numb, empty, and I walked away. The hardest part was not the leaving. It was realizing that I had already lost her long before I ever asked the question. And sometimes, the most painful thing you can do is to love someone enough to let them go, even when they did not have the courage to tell you they had already left. There are betrayals that scream, and there are betrayals that whisper so softly you almost do not hear them until it is too late. Today's story is not about anger, not about cheating. In the obvious way, it is about slow drifting, about two hearts that once beat together, quietly falling out of sync, without anyone having the courage to admit it. The hardest part of heartbreak is not always the moment they leave. It is the realization that they emotionally left long ago, and you were the only one still fighting. In today's story, the man on his knee, ring trembling in his hand, was still. In the story, they wrote together. But she was already living a different story, already wearing a promise from someone else. And the cruelty of it all is that he did not lose her that night on the beach. He lost her in all the small moments before that, in the silences that lasted too long, in the conversations that felt a little too forced, in the smiles that did not quite reach her eyes anymore. We often think heartbreak comes suddenly, like a lightning strike. But the truth is that it often comes slowly, softly, like a tide pulling away sand from under your feet, until one day you are standing alone on bare rock, wondering when the beach disappeared. And yet, even in that devastating moment, even when faced with the kind of pain that makes breathing feel impossible, he stood up, not because he stopped loving her, but because he finally loved himself enough to walk away from a love that was no longer his. That is the painful, beautiful truth about real love. You can love someone with your whole heart, with every breath, with every piece of your soul, and still you cannot make them stay. Because love is not just about how much you give. It is about what is returned. It is about two hearts choosing each other every single day. And if one heart chooses someone else, no amount of loyalty or history or dreams can change that. Today's story reminds us all that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to love someone enough to let them go. To accept that you deserve a love that is not a compromise, not a second choice, not a memory of something that used to be real. You deserve a love that is fierce, present, and certain. A love that does not make you beg for a seat at a table you helped build. You deserve to be chosen every day without hesitation. And if they cannot do that, it is not your failure. It is your freedom. Before we wrap up today's story, I want to take a moment to share some of the most powerful comments from the Reddit community. Because sometimes hearing the reflections of others who have survived their own heartbreaks reminds us that healing is a journey. We do not walk alone. Here are a few comments that truly resonated with me. Comment 1: You worth more than waiting. Fighting for someone who already gave up is like pouring your soul into a cup with a hole at the bottom. 10 8K likes. This is so real. You can pour everything you have into someone, but if they are no longer holding the same space for you, all that love just drains away, and you are left empty. Comment. 2. You choosing myself today. Loving someone is beautiful, but loving yourself enough to walk away when they do not choose you back is powerful. 9K likes. Exactly. Love is not just about staying, it is about recognizing when staying would mean losing yourself and choosing to protect your heart instead. Comment. No halfway love. You deserve a love that does not hesitate, a love that stands up for you, not one that slips away when you are not looking. 7K likes. Absolutely real love does not hide, it does not apologize for its existence. It shows up fully every single day. Comment. Show you freedom after goodbye. Sometimes the most painful endings are the beginning of the most beautiful freedoms. 1K likes. This could not be more true when one chapter closes, even if it shatters you. It creates the space you need to write a story that is finally yours. Comment. 5. You never plan B. If they cannot see your worth, let them watch you from afar while you thrive without them. 7. 5K likes. Beautifully said. You do not need to prove your value to someone who stopped looking. Sometimes your greatest revenge is living well, loving better, and healing fully. Reading all of your words reminds me that heartbreak is not the end of our story. It is the storm that clears the way for new beginnings. It teaches us what we deserve, what we will no longer accept, and what kind of love we are willing to wait for. If you have ever stood up from heartbreak, if you have ever chosen yourself when someone else did not, share your story in the comments below. Your strength matters, your journey matters, and somewhere, someone needs your light to find their way. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in a love that does not ask you to beg. Until next time, take care of your heart, and never settle for anything less than a love that chooses you without hesitation. She found him with someone else, but her reaction shocked everyone. Reddit, true story. Have you ever trusted someone with all your heart, believing that your love, your connection was strong enough to last forever? Have you ever sat alone in the middle of a bustling city, watching couples walk by hand in hand, wondering why your story didn't turn out the same way? Tonight we dive into the journey of Emma and Daniel. A story that began with warm glances, late-night conversations, and dreams of a shared future. But slowly, distance, long flights, and lonely evenings began to weave a different ending. This is not just a story about heartbreak. It is a story about trust, about the moment you realize that sometimes love alone is not enough to make someone stay. Amidst the endless lights of New York City and its golden streets, Emma and Daniel had everything, until one small choice. One moment of blurred lines changed everything. Whose side would you be on? Would you forgive? Or would you walk away? Stay with us as we uncover this emotional story. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find your own answers along the way. Emma and Daniel's story began in a way that felt almost cinematic. A chance meeting at a friend's art gallery in Soho. A clumsy hello, a shared laugh, and then hours of conversation that felt like minutes. Emma, a freelance graphic designer with a free spirit and a heart full of dreams. Daniel, a software engineer, logical and grounded, but with a secret love for poetry. They were different, and yet somehow perfectly balanced each other. For a year, life was sweet. Sunday morning coffees in Brooklyn, long walks through Central Park, quiet evenings spent planning a future together. But then came the offer Daniel couldn't refuse, a dream job in San Francisco, higher pay, better opportunities, a real chance to build something bigger. And with it came the inevitable question, could their love survive 3,000 miles of distance? At first, they promised each other it would. Video calls, weekend flights, handwritten letters tucked between packages of homemade cookies. They did everything right. Everything. Except for one thing. They underestimated how heavy loneliness can weigh on a heart. Emma noticed the little changes first. The missed calls that turned into short texts. The stories Daniel told about new friends, new routines, stories where she no longer fit naturally. Still she held on. Still she believed. And then, one chilly Friday evening, Emma decided to surprise Daniel. She booked a last-minute flight, carrying with her a small photo album she had spent weeks making, filled with memories of their time together. She imagined his face lighting up with joy. She imagined a kiss at the airport, a warm embrace, laughter echoing in his new apartment. But reality had different plans. When Emma arrived at Daniel's place, she hesitated for a moment before using the spare key he had given her months ago. Inside the lights were dim, the TV was on, and voices, soft laughter, floated from the living room. Emma turned the corner and saw him. Daniel relaxed on the couch sharing a pizza and a blanket with another woman. A woman Emma had heard about before. A colleague, he had said, just a friend. For a few seconds, Emma stood frozen, not from anger, but from a hollow emptiness she had never felt before. Daniel looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. Words tumbled from his lips, explanations, apologies, confusion, but Emma couldn't hear them. Her heart was too loud, beating a painful rhythm of disbelief. She didn't yell, she didn't cry. She simply placed the photo album on the coffee table, whispered a soft, "Take care," and walked out into the cold San Francisco night. Alone. That evening, sitting in the back of a taxi, on her way to the airport, Emma realized that sometimes love doesn't end in a dramatic storm. Sometimes it ends quietly, in the soft closing of a door, in the silence between two heartbeats that once raced for each other. Some stories end not with anger, not with betrayal shouted across a crowded room, but with silence. A silence so heavy it drowns out everything else. Emma and Daniel's story makes us question something deeper than loyalty. It asks us about presence, about effort, about how much we are willing to fight for the people we love when life pulls us in different directions. Was Daniel wrong for moving forward with his new life in San Francisco? Was Emma wrong for expecting their love to stay frozen in time while everything else changed around them? Love is rarely destroyed by a single moment. More often, it is worn down slowly by missed calls, by forgotten promises, by the tiny, invisible choices we make every day. Choices to share, or to withhold, to reach out, or to stay silent. Daniel may not have intended to hurt Emma. Perhaps he truly believed he was just building friendships, adapting to his new life. But intention does not erase impact. For Emma, the sight of Daniel sitting so comfortably next to someone else, it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about realizing that somewhere along the way, she had become an afterthought in the life of the person she loved most. And that realization, that quiet, devastating understanding, can be far more painful than any loud argument. What would you have done if you were Emma? Would you have stayed and demanded answers? Would you have fought for an explanation? Or would you, like her, have recognized that sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is to walk away without a word. Emma's story is a reminder that we deserve a love that chooses us, even when we are not in the room. A love that fights for us not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Because in the end, love is not proven by grand declarations. It is proven in the quiet moments, in the everyday choices, and in the way someone makes you feel seen, heard, and chosen again and again. Now that we have walked through Emma and Daniel's story, it is time to hear what the Reddit community had to say. And trust me, the comments are just as emotional and thought-provoking as the story itself. Let's dive in. Silent Dreamer Dean commented, "Long-distance relationships are like growing a garden across two cities. If both people are not watering it every day, it will eventually wither away." 5K likes. Beautifully said. Love demands daily nurturing, no matter how strong it starts. If it is not cared for, it eventually fades away like forgotten flowers. Heart on the road shared. Emma did the bravest thing. Walking away without causing a scene takes more strength than people realize. 9K likes. Absolutely. Dignity in heartbreak shows a level of inner strength many people overlook. Sometimes walking away quietly is the loudest form of self-respect. Or maybe. Tomorrow77 wrote, "Daniel did not cheat with actions, but he cheated with emotions. He created a space where someone else could exist, instead of Emma." 2K likes. That is such a powerful point. Emotional loyalty is just as important as physical faithfulness. Once someone else takes the space meant for you, the relationship begins to crumble. Too lonely. Planet Girl said, "Sometimes love ends not because people stop caring, but because they stop trying, and that is even sadder." Chinman in my 1K likes. Exactly. Effort is what keeps love alive. Without it, no amount of feelings can hold a relationship together. Throwaway confessions, commented. "Seeing Daniel so comfortable with someone else while Emma was still fighting for them broke my heart. She deserved better." 9 users. Hey likes. Many of us felt that heartbreak too. Emma deserved someone who fought for her presence, not someone who replaced it with convenience. Thank you to everyone who shared their incredible thoughts and emotions. If you have ever stood at a crossroad like Emma and Daniel, we would love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's story, hit the like button and subscribe for more journeys of love, trust, and the human heart. She got a wedding invitation from her ex. Her reaction left everyone speechless. True Reddit story. Have you ever thought you had moved on, that the wounds of the past had healed, that the memories no longer had the power to shake you? And then, out of nowhere, something so simple arrives. A name, a message, an invitation, and suddenly your heart is back to a place you thought you had left behind forever. Today we are about to step into the life of Melissa, a woman who built a new future after letting go of her first love. A woman who thought the past years until one quiet morning in New York City, when she opened an envelope that changed everything. Inside was not just a wedding invitation, it was a reminder of promises made and broken, of memories too powerful to stay silent, and of a choice that every one of us might one day face. When your past knocks on your door, do you answer it with a smile? Do you pretend it never happened? Or do you finally find the courage to close the chapter on your own terms? This is not just a story about love. It is a story about healing, about self-respect, and about the quiet power of letting go without looking back. Stay with us, because the choices Melissa makes might just make you question what you would do if faced with the ghost of your own first love. Melissa and Jason. Their story had all the makings of a fairy tale high school sweethearts in a small suburb of Boston. She was the dreamer. He was the steady hand that kept her grounded through late-night talks under the stars, through graduation ceremonies and tearful goodbyes at train stations, through job interviews and broken apartment heaters. They built something rare, something real. Everyone believed they would make it, even when life began to pull them in opposite directions. Melissa's ambition burned bright. New York City called to her like a beacon, a place where dreams felt just within reach. Jason, on the other hand, found comfort in the familiar. His family business, his hometown streets, the rhythm of a life he already knew. At first, they promised distance would not change them. Love letters turned into long texts. Weekend visits turned into postponed plans. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the foundation of their forever began to crack. It was not one big fight that ended them. It was the quiet erosion of everyday moments missed, the birthdays spent apart, the successes celebrated alone, the lonely Sunday mornings when phone calls felt like obligations instead of lifelines. One night, after a tearful phone call filled with more silence than words, they agreed it was time. No anger, no betrayal. Just two hearts, quietly realizing they could not grow together anymore. Melissa moved forward. She poured herself into a new life in New York. New friends, new dreams, new memories that no longer had Jason at the center. 2 years later, on a rainy afternoon as she sorted through her mail, there it was. A thick envelope with elegant gold lettering. Her breath caught in her chest as she carefully opened it. A wedding invitation. Jason and Emily. A name she vaguely remembered from old gatherings. Always the girl in the background, now the woman walking down the aisle towards the boy Melissa once thought would be hers forever. But it was not just the invitation that shook her. Tucked inside was a handwritten note. A note in a handwriting she had once memorized. I hope you can be there. You were such an important part of my life. It would not feel right without you. Melissa stared at those words, not knowing whether to laugh or to cry. Was it kindness? Was it cruelty? Or was it simply two people trying to make sense of a chapter they never fully closed? Friends flooded her phone with advice. Go and show him what he lost. Stay away, protect your peace. Maybe this is the closure you need. Melissa thought long and hard. She imagined walking into that church, seeing Jason smile at another woman. The way he once smiled at her, imagined feeling like a stranger in a story she helped build but no longer belonged to. In the end, she realized she owed herself more than that. She wrote a simple letter in return. Thank you for the invitation. I wish you a lifetime of happiness. I will be cheering for you from afar. But she never sent it. Some goodbyes are meant to stay silent. Some chapters are meant to be closed quietly, not with grand gestures, but with a quiet nod to the past and a bold step toward the future. That evening, standing by her apartment window, watching the rain dance against the city lights, Melissa smiled for the first time in a long time, not because she had erased the past, but because she had finally made peace with it. Melissa's story is not just about lost love. It is about the quiet battles we fight within ourselves, the choices we make when no one is watching, and the silent victories that come without applause. When Melissa opened that wedding invitation, she stood at a crossroads many of us might one day face. Do you walk back into a past that once broke you, hoping to prove that you are stronger, or do you protect the fragile peace you fought so hard to rebuild? It would have been easy for Melissa to show up, smile politely, pretend the scars never existed. But healing is not about appearances. Healing is about honoring your own journey, recognizing that your story is not a supporting role in someone else's. Happy ending. Jason may have genuinely wanted to include Melissa as a gesture of closure or gratitude, but intentions do not always align with emotions. For Melissa, attending that wedding would not have been a celebration. It would have been a reopening of wounds carefully stitched closed. Sometimes forgiveness does not need to be public. Sometimes closure comes not from dramatic confrontations, but from a quiet decision to move forward without looking back. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest form of self-love is choosing yourself in a world that constantly asks you to prioritize others. Melissa did not need Jason to validate her worth. She did not need to sit in a pew smiling through 1,000 tiny heartbreaks. She chose herself, her peace, her future, and in doing so, she taught us something powerful. Sometimes closure is not given, it is created. Sometimes the most powerful goodbyes are the ones spoken in silence, and sometimes the true victory is not in being remembered by others, but in remembering your own strength when it would have been easier to forget. We have walked through Melissa's journey together. We have felt her strength, her pain, and her quiet triumph. Now it is time to hear what the Reddit community thought about her story. And trust me, the comments are just as powerful as the story itself. Let us dive into some of the most touching and insightful responses. Broken but Blooming commented, "Healing is not about pretending the past did not happen. It is about accepting it happened and choosing not to let it define you." 2K likes. This comment captures it perfectly. Melissa did not erase her past. She honored it by refusing to let it hold her back. True healing is quiet, but it is powerful. City Lights. Soul shared. Showing up would have been easy. Staying away took real courage. Sometimes protecting your peace is the biggest victory. 81K likes. Exactly. It is easy to chase closure or validation, but choosing silence, choosing yourself, that is a strength that often goes unnoticed, but it matters the most. You quiet strength. E8 wrote, "The fact that Jason thought it was appropriate to invite her shows how little he understood the depth of their history." 8K likes. An interesting point. Sometimes people move on so quickly that they forget not everyone heals at the same speed. Intentions might be pure, but they can still reopen old wounds. 5 Linings only said, "I love that Melissa did not make her healing a performance. She chose peace over pride, and that is something we should all learn to." 9K likes. So true healing does not have to be loud to be real. Melissa's quiet goodbye speaks louder than any grand gesture ever could. Throwaway. Dreams 2 commented, "Sometimes the biggest flex is choosing not to show up. To know you have nothing to prove to anyone, just living your best life." 3K likes. I absolutely love this. The real glow-up is internal. Melissa showed us that the strongest move is knowing your worth without needing to display it to the world. Thank you to everyone who shared their thoughts and feelings on this story. Melissa's journey touched so many hearts and reminded us all that healing is personal, powerful, and often silent. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between the past and your peace? Share your story in the comments below, and if you enjoyed today's journey, do not forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories that speak to the heart.